46 and a half years ago, my predecessor, Erwin Josby, stood here on his last Friday night and spoke to a packed sanctuary. I was seated right here on the landing. There was no place else left to sit. Listening to Erwin address the congregation in his blue suit and Hermes tie, just as I am doing now. Lately, we have often heard the phrase, standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. So let me take you back to 1958 or 59. I was 6 or 7 years old and heard the music of Congregation Sinai for the first time. It wasn't just the music, but it was the totality of the experience. Hearing the voices, feeling the heat, breathing in the stuffy air, wafting, humid, with sweat, perfume, and colognes, all being taken in by a 6 or 7-year-old little boy. Fast forward to August 21st, 1965, the day of my bar mitzvah. Cantor Erskine pulled this box out for me to stand on. I was short and skinny back then. I'm not going to speak a lot about Cantor Erskine today. I've spoken about him many times. He was a giant for me. But today is the day to talk about my predecessors, the people whose shoulders I have stood on. I didn't realize at the time, but it was the same quartet that I had heard those years before at 4th in New Hampshire, who sang at my bar mitzvah service. Fast forward again to 1975. By board approval, I was engaged as organist and choir director of Sinai Temple. My first contract was signed by then President David Lippert. I don't think it was coincidental at all that in 1956, his wife, Hannah Lippert, who supervised the primary department of the religious school under Jules Lessner, the director of the religious school, hired my mother, and 19 years later, David Lippert hired me. As a child, I knew who Dr. Alfred Sendry was. He was the old man who had a distinct shuffle as he walked and Ben-Gurion-esque white hair coming out of everywhere except the top of his head. I knew he was the organist, and each time I saw him, he carried a folder of disheveled papers. I eventually came to find out that Dr. Sendry was a widely regarded music historian. All college music students have taken music history classes. A man by the name of Kurt Sachs wrote a history textbook, which was used when I was matriculating through Cal State Northridge. Dr. Sendry wrote 3 books, Bibliography of Jewish Music, David's Harp, and Music of the Jews in Antiquity. Imagine my shock to see Kurt Sachs' preface to one of Dr. Sendry's books. These guys clearly knew each other and traveled the same circles. I was 23 years old, and I was astounded by this greatness. Max Helfman and his music are legendary. He was music director at Sinai Temple in the late 1950s as we transitioned here to the west side. Cantor Erskine, Dr. Sendry and the choir with Rabbi Cohen officiated at 4th in New Hampshire, while Rabbi Chodas, Max Helfman, and a choir, accompanied by Dr. Bob Strasberg, officiated across the street here in Helms Hall at Westwood Methodist Church. Helfman left Los Angeles and became music director at Washington Hebrew Congregation in Washington, D.C., and we moved into this building. Services were presided over by Cantor Erstein, Dr. Sendry, and the quartet. In 1965, the year of my bar mitzvah, Erwin Jospe succeeded Dr. Sendry, and Erwin was amazing. Just watching him and some of the tools that he taught me that I have used every time I sit down to play, including today. I watched him accompany Robert Merrill, Richard Tucker, and many, many others. And it's ironic that Erwin Jospe left Jewish music in Los Angeles, in the United States, to go to Israel to coach opera at Tel Aviv University. Erwin conducted the same quartet I heard as a boy. When I assumed this position, 3 of the 4 members of the quartet had been conducted and or accompanied by Max Helfman, Alfred Sendry, and Erwin Jospe. Again, I was astounded to be surrounded and enveloped by this greatness. I felt this right from the beginning. The quartet welcomed me and embraced me. When I had doubts, they comforted me, and their encouragement was steadfast. Especially Estelle Marlov, who was our soprano soloist for 36 years, whose soaring voice I loved from the first time I heard her as that little boy. Estelle died in 1991 from brain cancer. Roy, this is what I wanted you to zoom in for those who are watching from home. I had gone every day to see her. The last time she could sing a few notes from bed, she looked over and just sang, perfectly placed. I had Riva Schaefer make this talit, and on the Atara, I had her use that text, Pitruli Sha'arei Tzedek, to always remember her by. It may have been self-imposed, but this was the heavy yoke I felt, to honor all of them by doing my best at every service, every Shabbat, every festival, every high holy day season. I felt like I was the gatekeeper of this great tradition, and I needed to maintain the highest level for all of them and for myself, week in and week out, with the exception of only 2 Shabbatot that I have missed in 46 and a half years. Only 2. I always felt that Sinai was the flagship for this type of service that we have had all these years. We have friends and colleagues who envied us and could only aspire to what we achieved here regularly. I often used the allegory of the music being a tapestry with different threads being added or changed here and there. But now, the tapestry is going to change, and some familiar threads being added in. You will have to be patient with the process and try to enjoy the new adventure. As I start the next chapter, I'm excited about the prospects. I have a concert already scheduled for the spring of 2024 and discussions about some other pending opportunities. In my Emeritus status, I'm continuing to work on recataloging, digitizing, and entering all of the music archives into a database to preserve it and make it a useful tool for anyone researching Jewish music. By a generous donation to my Organist Music Fund, I have the assistance of Jamie Ace, a UCLA graduate student, to work with me on this important project. And of course, I am continuing to teach our B'nai Mitzvah students as the senior mentor in our program. Then there are the increased travel opportunities that Moji and I are looking forward to with great anticipation, both here and abroad, and to making many, many, many more memories together. I wish to acknowledge and thank all of our rabbis, Cantor Feldman, Anna Tenenblatt, our president, and a special thanks to the members of the mighty Sinai Choir, Jennifer Weiss, Claudia Sobel, Jeremy Schoenberg, and Scott Levin. And I would like to also mention my good friend for over 40 years, Michael McClish, who is here today. And I would like to give special recognition to Ty Woodward, who has played here when I'm away, and this is no easy task. When I first asked Ty to come to Sinai to play, it was only after asking many other people who turned me down, because the task is very daunting. While I have a camera now since 2010, when Eric Diamond was president, we revamped some of the security here in the sanctuary, and a camera was added for me to be able to see what is happening on the bima. I had been flying by wire all of those years up until then. So anybody coming in, the service was very, very daunting. But Ty not only took the challenge, he was ready for it. And I want to thank him for his dedication and his artistry, and for being my friend all of these years and beyond. Thank you, Ty. Happy New Year. You will all remain in my thoughts and my prayers. May this be a most bountiful year in every way for all of you and your families. And as Michael Isaacson so beautifully wrote for me, Lehitraot, until we see each other again, Shabbat Shalom.